Internet Labs. We're making a new browser for protecting digital rights. And I previously worked for Blockstack, which is why I have the t-shirt. I was an early engineer and I built a lot of the technology that Muneeb talked about. I'm also a co-founder of the Bitcoin Association of Hong Kong. So if you're in Hong Kong, come say hi. Today I'm going to talk to you about app mining. As Muneeb mentioned, app mining is an incentive mechanism for the Blockstack ecosystem. Much like mining Bitcoin incentivized people to secure the network and to distribute the tokens, app mining functions in a similar way, but instead of securing the network, it incentivizes people to make really great apps. So here you can see sort of a list of some of the top apps in the app mining program. I'm going to talk about how the app mining program works. Right now, the program works by distributing $100,000 US to apps, the best apps in the ecosystem every month. So we're going to talk about like the 3 steps you need to go through to get started with app mining. The first step is to learn how to build an app on Blockstack. So you can do that by going through our Zero to dApp tutorial. If you want to scan the QR code here, you can go directly to the tutorial and see how easy it is to get started. It only takes about an hour if you're a JavaScript developer, and it will walk you through building your own animal kingdom. An animal kingdom is sort of like a virtual universe where you can like put animals in your kingdom, and you can take animals from other people's kingdoms and interact with them. If you complete the tutorial, you get this really cool free t-shirt as well. So, unfortunately, I don't have them here today. I don't even have one myself. I don't think Muneeb has one of these t-shirts either.
Because I haven't finished the tutorial.
You only get the t-shirt if you finish the tutorial. So if you ever see one of these in the real world, that person is a certified dApp developer. Once you've figured out how to learn how to build a Blockstack app, your next step is to sort of think about your idea and the problem that you're trying to solve, the user pain point. And you look at your toolbox here of the different parts in the Blockstack ecosystem, the platform that you can use to solve your users' problems. You're probably going to want to use authentication. And you're definitely going to want to use Gaia storage to store the data that your app generates. The next step, once you've sort of created your MVP, is to register your app on app.co for app mining. App.co is a universal dApp store. This is something you can check out right now if you go to app.co. You can see all the popular Blockstack apps. And when you create an app, your app will also be listed here. So it really helps to sort of like drive users to your app when you're trying to get your initial users. The way the app mining program works is it works on a monthly basis. So you have to register your app for the next month by the end of the current month. And on the first day of the month, which was yesterday, Blockstack, the app mining team of Blockstack PBC will create a list of all of the apps that have registered for app mining and send it to the people who are app reviewers. And we'll talk about these app reviewers in a bit, but what they do is sort of go through apps and help to determine which apps are the best. And in the middle of the month, the app reviewers have to submit all of their reviews to the app mining team. I think that happens on the 10th this month. And the team will correlate those and sort of calculate the scores. And then once they do that, they'll announce the results of app mining and distribute the payments to everybody. This is a list of the current app reviewers in the Blockstack app mining program. So these 5 companies work together. They work independently, but then their scores are sort of aggregated together, and a ranking is created to distribute the money every month to the best apps in the ecosystem. So the first app reviewer is Product Hunt, and Product Hunt is sort of a community of people that like to try out new apps. And so their score comes from sort of rating like what the community thinks about the apps. Democracy Earth is a voting platform where token holders, investors in the Blockstack ecosystem, can vote on their favorite apps. Try My UI is an app that has many people that test out the apps and sort of critique their user experience and their user interface. And they also, as a benefit, provide a video back for the developers so they can see what the reviewers thought of their app and sort of what problems they encountered when trying to use the app. Awario is our newest app reviewer, and they're sort of a company that helps to measure the reach, sort of the marketing reach of your app. How many people know about it? Are people talking about your app? So if you really get the word out successfully, you can do very well on their score. And finally is my company, New Internet Labs. And what we do is we rank apps based on how well they protect your digital rights. So the two metrics we look at right now are whether or not you allow users to use their own identity, to use Blockstack authentication. And we also look at whether or not the apps use Gaia storage. So we want to make sure that apps are storing data in a place that the user controls, so their own digital storage locker, as opposed to on the server of the app developer. And finally, once you've gone through one round of app mining, you'll want to take the feedback you get from various reviewers and try to incorporate that into the next iteration of your app and improve it so that you can earn more money and win the next time around. Thanks so much for your time. If you want to join our Telegram group, you can scan this QR code and talk to other developers and other people in the Blockstack community. If you want to learn more about app mining, you can go to app.co/mining. Thanks.
Please don't tell me that you actually printed out our SSD file.
I actually did. So this isn't working, Jay? Could I?
안녕하세요. 저 해시드에서 노 스페셜리스트로 일하고 있는 강진이라고 합니다. 반갑습니다. So first of all, I would like to thank Muneeb for coming all the way to Seoul. And I'm personally very excited about this project because of Regulation A+. So today, I would like to tell you a little bit about the overview of the SEC and securities law and explain to you how exciting it is for me to present Blockstack in front of you today. So, Muneeb, if you will allow me, I would like to give you the basic securities law in the United States. So, Section 5 of the Securities Act 1933 states that for you to issue or register a security, you have to register, unless exemptions apply. 한국말로 잠깐 설명을 드리자면요. 증권이 상장되기 위해서는 이제 취득 신고를 해야 되는데 신고에서 예외가 될 수 있는 경우가 몇 가지가 있습니다. So these exemptions, so overall there's Section 3, Section 4. The most famous other exemptions here are Regulation A, CF, D, S 144A. To tell you about Regulation S, that's a regulation specifically for non-US investors. And 144A is for resale of registered securities. So today I would like to focus on Regulation A, CF, which stands for crowdfunding, and Regulation D, which Muneeb probably knows a little bit about. Okay, so next stage, please. So, I did a very simple chart for you to understand and appreciate the differences between all the rules. So the first three columns are Regulation D exemptions. So as you can see, there are 4 important information that we need to take into consideration. So dollar cap is how much money can you raise under each regime. And then, who are the permitted investors? And 3 is there any resale limitation? And 4, can you solicit? In other words, can you go up to people and say, will you buy my securities? So, as you can see, Rule 504, that's limited at 5 million. The first and the latter 2, there is no limitation. However, it's only available to what they call accredited investors. And they are usually people with income or asset of over 1 million. I would like to be an accredited investor. Unfortunately, I'm not. And I do not make 200K a year, unfortunately. So it's not available for the general public. However, as you can see, Regulation A and Regulation A+. So Regulation A is up to 20 million for 1 year, and Regulation A+ is up to 50 million in 1 year. But that is not just open to accredited investors, but to the general public, so for everyone. There is a per investor cap that I will tell you more about later on. And for regulation crowdfunding, as you can see, it's only 1 million. So Regulation A+ has a definite advantage of a large cap, but also open to the public. And as you can see, there is no resale limitation, and you are also allowed to generally solicit or test the water, as Muneeb said at the beginning. So I hope this was helpful. It took me hours to make this chart. Okay. So one of the things that Regulation A+ allows them to do is not register. However, this doesn't mean that you are off the hook. So I actually printed this, which is a offering circular that you have to publish. So you know how different blockchain projects publish their white papers? So this is their white paper in law. So a little bit thicker, a lot of information is in here. But I wanted to talk about some of the information that has been offered to us and share them with you and get some insights from Muneeb. I hope that's okay.
Sounds great.
Okay, so the first is the corporate structure, which I found interesting. So this is the Blockstack corporate structure. And as you can see at the top of the diagram, you have Blockstack Public Benefit Corporation. So usually you would have a limited liability company or public company, but public benefit corporation is very different in that they have to have a charter which serves a greater benefit for the public, not just the corporate interest for the shareholders. And I believe this is a welcome fresh air in the industry because it's catering and thinking just more about benefit and your investment return. And given that in the past year, about 12 blockchain projects have applied for Regulation A, but there hasn't been any completion success story yet, I personally believe that this could be a differentiating factor in SE's favorable conclusion. So Muneeb, can you tell me a little bit more about your decision to go for the public benefit corporation structure and how that might help you get through the process?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think for the public benefit corp, is this on?
It is on.
Okay.
You just have to kind of, yeah.
Okay. Yeah, so I think for the public benefit corp, the reason was actually governance, in the sense that a lot of projects, they tend to set up like a separate nonprofit foundation. And the thing is, you can't have the same people who are controlling two different entities, because then that's just operational overhead. It doesn't actually provide any real benefit because the same people and same decision makers. At the same time, you know, having a C corp sometimes has this negative perception as well, and for good reason, where developers would rightly question that you have your own profit motives and you're building open source software. Like, how is this going to play out in the long term? And when we discovered the public benefit corp structure, we felt that that's a very interesting middle ground, where we don't need to have this overhead of having two different entities. One is a nonprofit, one is a for-profit, but at the same time, we can very explicitly lay out the goals for what is the particular public benefit that we value and we are going to uphold while operating as pretty much like a C corporation. And that doesn't mean that, you know, there's no room for a nonprofit or other independent entities in the ecosystem. We are building an ecosystem and not just a single company. What that means is that gives us the time and bandwidth to truly have independent entities. I think Larry's company is a great example, where even though the parent corp made an investment in Larry's entity, we made sure that we don't have any control, and we have a very small share of the company. There are no directors or any influence of the officers at all. So it's a truly independent entity. And when we set up our nonprofit, we will follow the same procedure, where that is a truly independent entity with no overlap on directors and officers.
So that was the overall structure. And the rest of the document, Muneeb mentioned a lot of risk factors, disclosures, and audited financials. So these information are meant to help you guide your investment decision because they are meant to provide transparent information about the company. So I've read, actually, through the document, and I picked out 3 topics that I thought were very interesting. And these topics, I believe, are only relevant to blockchain company because they challenge some of the legal paradigms that have existed. So the first one is, there will be a lot of words, don't be scared. Yes. So this is from page 104 of the document, in which they go through registration as transfer agent. So for you to have a security, you need to have a transfer agent. But Blockstack has a very different and interesting position as to why they're not really needed. So Muneeb, could you tell me about what is a transfer agent, what do they do, and why is that you think they are not needed in your project?
Yeah, absolutely. And I forgot to answer one question you asked earlier. That was about the relation to public benefit corp and potentially getting SEC's qualification.
Oh, yes.
I actually don't think that it matters that much. I think the public benefit corp was an earlier decision, and the work we are doing with the SEC probably wouldn't be impacted even if we filed it. And in fact, the real filing is, if you go back to the corporate structure, the filing is done by Token LLC, which is a subsidiary that we have. And the reason for that is that New York has this very interesting local law that interferes with a lot of work with crypto projects. So we had to open an office and an entity in New Jersey, and I would have to go out and work out of New Jersey to issue these tokens. And I think New York might be one of the rare places on this planet where if you live in New York, you may not be able to participate in yeah, so that was the previous question for transfer agents. So I think a little bit background first, that these regulations came out in 1933. Securities are generally almost always equity in a company, right? And so we are, our insight was that we thought that our technology can adapt faster to regulations than regulations can adapt to the technology. So in a way, we are trying to fit these crypto protocols into existing law. So I think this is a great example of something that usually there are transfer agents and they're regulated, and then that's for protection of like some of these transfers that happen, and there are logs associated with these things. And in our kind of like decentralized protocol, a lot of that is like very irrelevant. And so over here, we're trying to make the case that miners don't need to register as transfer agents, which would be like people would not mine on our network if they had to register as transfer agents. Similarly, I think at some point we also make the case that the blockchain itself doesn't need to be a transfer agent. The blockchain is not an entity, and actually you cannot make the blockchain register as a transfer agent anywhere. And stuff like that. But I think it's more like trying to point out that some of these laws don't apply to these new types of assets, whereas there are many things which are still helpful, like the disclosures, like the audited financials and all the information that by law we are required to disclose to all of the investors. This was not a thing that was applicable.
So to summarize, I think blockchain challenges a lot of the legal assumptions. So it challenges the concept of central or decentral authority or entity. So the law assumes that there has to be one central entity that has to be liable in case things go wrong. So the benefit is for the protection of the consumers like us and ourselves. But also the technology enables us to now question that central assumption. And I think this is a perfect example to illustrate that the law is a little bit behind because I think they need to be conservative and, but at the same time, what kind of innovations can drive this, new technology to flourish is kind of the main question that I would like to ask for the regulators. So actually, Muneeb beat me to my next question, which was about miners as broke dealers. So I think we've already covered that the technology allows to remove some of the intermediaries that the law imposes and thinks that exists, but blockchain enables them to be actually dispensed with. So I will skip to the third point, which I thought was very interesting, in that there isn't a lot of legal guidance on the concept of burning. So, Jade, yes. Basically, Regulation M, which I haven't covered, it says that you're not allowed to sell and buy back securities at the same time. And I think you've already anticipated the concept of burning and how that could be caught by this Regulation M. Could you tell us once again how your project is a little bit beyond the law, actually, in that regard?
Yeah, so I think this was again one of those exercises where there's an existing law, then we had to kind of like look at our network and the different operations on the network and how it might trigger certain things that might not be directly applicable. So one of the things was this Regulation M, where basically, just at a very high level, like this is stepping back a little bit. So the Stacks token is a utility token. Clearly has utility. Our blockchain is live. You can use it to register digital assets. There are all these applications on the network already that you can use. And we also got legal opinions from half a dozen jurisdictions around the world, including UK, France, Germany, Singapore, Hong Kong, and everywhere in these jurisdictions it's not considered a security. Right? So it's a clearly utility token like Bitcoin or Ether can be listed in exchanges and whatnot. In the US, given the securities regulations and the lens that they take or the criteria that they look at, it's called the Howey test, through which it's at best like unclear that is it a security or not. Right? So we take the stance that we believe it's a utility token, but due to an abundance of caution, we're going to comply with all the securities regulations anyway, until it's abundantly clear to the regulators that it is not a security. Right? So we are complying with these regulations for a time period until it's clear that this is not a security. Usually a security is something where you're dependent on the effort of a company, or you're dependent on the effort of someone, and you have some potential returns in mind. So you think that you will get some returns on your investment based on the effort of others, and whereas in a fully decentralized network, there's no single such entity that has too much control over the network. So we view decentralization as a path where you have to take a very thoughtful approach, like how you're decentralizing various aspects of it. And at some point, we do believe, and this is disclosed in our filing, that our company will not have a lot of control or power on the network. And we are doing various things to go in that direction. For this particular case, the issue was that if we are mining on our own network, because the token is being considered a security, we are kind of like buying our own security, and which is not allowed. So we basically said that sure, our company will not be a miner on the network, and we would try to get other independent entities to mine.
So to clarify, this level of disclosure and thoughtfulness of having entertained all the possibilities and all the different scenarios that could apply to the project, he didn't really have to do this, but he did it to make the standard higher for the industry. And that's one of the reasons why I personally respect your project, and I'm guessing this hasn't been easy.
It's kind of funny. So when when I was starting the project, like I was in the final year of my PhD, and I took a leave to start the company. And it was like almost like 4 years had passed, and my parents and everyone thought I'm not going back to school ever to finish my PhD. I eventually did. I took some time and wrote a thesis, which was basically the work I was doing anyway, so I finished it. Then when I started doing a deep dive on these regulations, a lot of the people at our company, they started joking that if you want to go back to school to now do a JD, maybe you should do that. But I'm absolutely not interested in becoming a lawyer. This was all due to necessity. You have to basically our process was very interesting. In a way, I started enjoying it at some point as well. We'll get some of the top lawyers in the country in a room. I will be the bridge between the technology and the law, and basically try to understand that what's tripping you up, what's the issue, why are you getting so concerned about this particular issue, and then I'll try to tweak the technology, because I know I can't change the law. I'll try to tweak the technology so that that concern kind of goes away. And it was a very iterative process, and then I think as far as dealing with the SEC, I think they're being very thoughtful. It's actually clearly not a case of I can be publicly critical of the BIT license, for example, because of which we had to open a New Jersey office. It's a case of people not really fully understanding what's going on, and just doing something in a hurry and trying to preempt something and having a law that is clearly less than perfect. Whereas the SEC is taking a very thoughtful approach. They actually understand that everyone is watching. There was an interview with Chairman Clinton in New York, where he clearly understands that because they're taking some time for these regulations, in a way, they're a potential roadblock to innovation, because projects can leave the U.S. or they can try to block off U.S. investors. But at the same time, they are firm believers that their securities regulations are a big reason for the stability of their IPO markets, and it is one of the biggest economy in terms of those markets. And they think that the world is watching. When they come up with certain regulations or certain guidelines, it will impact the rest of the world as well. So they're just trying to make sure that they understand fully what's going on, and that's why I think they were very open to a dialogue. They wanted high quality parties to come to them, so that it can be an iterative process where we can try to educate them, they can try to tell us what their concerns are, and we can try to move forward. So I think if there is a thing that could have been better, it might have been if it didn't take this much time, but hopefully they've heard us on that as well, and they've promised that they will try to iterate faster and see what happens.
Great. And I think that's a wonderful segue to my last slide, which isn't particular about the project, but I would like to tell you that Regulation A and Regulation A+, so 20 mil and 50 mil, that's been possible because Obama passed the Jobs Act in 2015, and the SEC actually implemented Section 401 of the Jobs Act, allowing for the Regulation A+ to exist. So for 23 years, Regulation A was capped at 5 million. So for me, this, as you said, is a wonderful way or portal that blockchain can utilize some of the innovative regulatory regime and portals to be able to have a clear, legitimate, compliant way to make their project public. Unfortunately, the process does not exist yet in South Korea. And I was wondering, you've mentioned so much about this kind of the value of dialogue between the government, SEC, and the project. And I would like to see if you have any advice for Korea, so that we can try to become the next champion in the industry as well. What kind of efforts that all the players should play in harmonizing this regime?
I think that first of all, we should basically think of regulations in a way that is something that we need to figure out if we want our technology to go mainstream. right? Otherwise, the technology would always, you know, exist in back alleys, and there will always be this fear of like, what if the regulators come in and do this or do that? So to become comfortable, to make this as widespread as possible, to really take the technology to the masses, I fundamentally believe that we have to engage the regulators. Like they have to get comfortable. If a lot of education is needed, like people should be willing to engage with that. For Korea, like I'm like, you know, this is my first time here, so I'm actually not very familiar with the local ecosystem or how the regulations work. But I feel that at least like a lot of people have told me that some regulators look up to the SEC. They're really like a very influential agency, even within the U.S. Like they're one of the big dogs. Like they have a lot of power, and I think like hopefully some of the work that we're doing can help, where everyone doesn't have to kind of like reinvent the wheel. They can look at some of the regulations coming out potentially from the SEC, try to adapt them locally as well. And then basically, at the end of the day, we should understand that we should assume that the regulators have good intention. Like they're there to protect the retail institutions. They're there to kind of like make sure that bad actors don't kind of like run away with people's money. That's a real concern. But at the same time, entrepreneurs also have a valid concern that you are hampering innovation, you're making things so much harder, and we need to find the right balance. And if we come up with frameworks that are very easy to replicate, that even if you look at venture investing, right, like it kept becoming easier and easier, where you can just like copy paste the same kind of like best practices or frameworks and then quickly get funded. I think it's entirely possible that such crowdfunding mechanisms, which are very inherent to blockchains, like you don't want, you want a wide distribution of the token because it's decentralized, you want a lot of different parties. It's possible that over time the legal bills will start going down, the overhead of doing these things will start going down, and regulators will just be like more open to that. It's very early days in our industry, so I'm hopeful.
Well, so that's all I've had for today. I hope that was enlightening for you as well as for me. And I sincerely wish you the best of luck. And I hope for good news from the SEC. Thank you.
Thanks for actually using it.
Thank you so much. It definitely was very enlightening for me as well. I didn't actually know Muneeb could answer paragraphs on page 104 with so much deep knowledge and understanding, interpreted with a history background, and can remember that it was laws written in 1935. It was quite a.
No, just a quick comment. So you're supposed to kind of like read every word and sentence of this filing, and there are lawyers who are supposed to proof check everything, that every single thing is based on a fact and we can back it up. But at the end of the day, it was my name on the thing where I was taking the legal risk that what's in there is true. So I'm pretty damn sure with the kind of thing.
Coming back to what we just at the beginning of the meetup, that we are really witnessing a revolution of computing.